Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. I posted a couple videos recently about the 77 Highboy project, and I got a really positive response. And I thought, well, maybe I'd give a little walk around of the Highboy and talk about what I'm doing with it and what we're building and some of the things we're going to add to it to make it better than it was original. Anyways, let's take a walk around. So this is a 1977 Ford F250 four-wheel drive. This is the early 77. They're known as Highboys. It's actually not a Ford term. It's a term that was used in the aftermarket parts catalogs to differentiate between the early 77 and the late 77. I may do a video later about the differences between the Highboy and so-called Lowboy. But this is a Highboy. It is an early 77. It's set a little bit higher from the factory, hence the term Highboy. After February production 1977, there were no more Highboys. Contrary to a lot of people, what they say is that 78 and 79 there were Highboys, there was none produced. They were gone. So my father bought this brand new in Fort Wayne, Indiana in the blizzard of 77, and this one was built in October of 76, but living its life in the Rust Belt, it had a rough life with rusting out the body. So we've replaced a lot of the body parts, sandblasted the frame down to bare metal and coated it, done a lot of work to it. This is going to be a really cool project. So my goal with this build is to recreate the truck from my childhood. Since my father bought this brand new, this truck has been in my life my entire life in some way. I'm trying to build the truck that I remember and I remember driving, but make a couple improvements. We always wished it had overdrive. We always wished it had air conditioning, and fuel injection is going to be a nice addition as well. Otherwise, we're leaving it pretty much stock, and it's going to be a great driver. Not planning to race it, off-road it or anything, just going to be a great driver. You may have seen in a previous video, we did the engine installation and break-in of this 400 modified engine. These are not a very well-liked engine in the Ford community. But in 1977, emissions laws changed, and the FE engine, the 360 and 390s that had been in production previously in the pickups, went away, and they went to the 351M and 400. This one here used to be a 351M. Unfortunately, when I rebuilt it, the performance parts that I needed to make it a better engine weren't available for the 351M. Thankfully, there's only two differences between the 351M and the 400, and that is the crankshaft and the pistons. Otherwise, it's the exact same components. So we built a 400, and I'm pretty excited about this engine because it has higher compression and advanced timing versus the original that were kind of retarded in the timing area and had low compression for emissions reasons. This is going to be a really great runner. It did great during the break-in. I'm excited to have it. I've got some of this Edelbrock carburetor and ignition system plumbed in just for temporary for that run, but we'll be putting fuel injection on it and electronic ignition. Something that was unique to Ford four-wheel drives, particularly the Highboys, was the power assist steering. This isn't power steering as in most vehicles where it has a power steering gearbox. It has your standard manual steering gearbox with no hoses or anything going to it, and then it uses this drag link with a hydraulic valve set up inside of it to feel whether you're wanting to turn left or turn right. By moving that with that manual steering gearbox, it sends hydraulic pressure through this mess of hoses down to a steering ram on the axle, and that assists you. It doesn't actually do the full hydraulic steering, it just kind of helps you along. I didn't think it was too bad when I drove it in high school, and I'm trying to keep the truck fairly original, so I decided to go back with the original hydro assist. They are prone to leaking. A lot of people don't like them because they leak real bad. Parts are expensive. I managed to get all of this rebuilt by a company in North Dakota called Blue Top. They rebuilt not only the cylinder, but they also rebuilt the gearbox and valve body for me. at a very reasonable price that was actually far less than converting it to actual power steering. So 1976 and 1977 were the only years of the Highboy to have disc brakes on the front. Before that, they had drum brakes on the front. They were a little bit behind the times on the front axle. In fact, if you go back even earlier, at some point they were closed knuckle. You can see this one is an open knuckle front end. You can see the U-joint right there. It's got these great big fat Spicer hubs on it, which I thought was so cool as a kid. And I managed to find some new old stock knobs for it. We're going to rebuild those, put them together. Rear axle's basically stock. It's a Dana 60 on the rear. We rebuilt the brakes to just like the original. Put new seals in it, cleaned it up. It's going to be a great runner. It has 410 gears. From what I've read, all the Highboys had 410 gears in them, but I could be wrong on that. So you can see we've got the rear Dana 60 axle. Since it came from the rust belt and I'm used to all the rust, I decided to do stainless steel brake lines. So every single brake line on this truck is brand new. I got the stainless steel kit from a company called Inline Tube, and they fit great. The rubber lines are just auto parts store. I think Dorman or Ray Bestis was the brand, but if you look on the Ford-Trucks website on the thread build, it gives part numbers for everything. So we rebuilt all of the spring bushings and shackles, and you can see this one here had to get a new shackle for the rear. All new bolts. The springs are original. They were pretty well taken care of, and they're arched still pretty correctly. So we reused those. You can see they still look pretty good. We got new U-bolts on there. You can see the frame has been sandblasted and coated with KBS coatings. It's kind of like POR15, but a different brand. Came out really nice. So it has a NP205 new process transfer case, which is what makes the Highboy unique, is the fact that it's a divorce transfer case. If you notice, the transfer case is not connected to the transmission. There's a drive shaft that separates them. The drive shaft's not installed right now, but that's what makes part of what makes a Highboy, the divorce transfer case. This body came off another parts truck. The original truck wasn't equipped with very many options. Didn't have air conditioning, didn't even have a cigarette lighter from the factory. The truck cab that we got from the parts truck was an XLT Ranger, so it had all the bells and whistles, and we're going to be putting the air conditioning and that sort of stuff into the new truck. However, I won't be badging it an XLT Ranger. It'll be a custom just like the original. The bed we got was in pretty decent shape, except the floor and the wheel wells were damaged. It was just starting to rust through right here. We got some patch panels, had them welded in, and it came out pretty nice. And while we were at it, we went ahead and replaced the inner piece, little splash guard. Unfortunately, the floor in the parts truck was pretty rough. Someone had left a bunch of brush on there, and it rusted out the floor in some spots, so I got a replacement floor piece. It was very labor intensive and not much fun. As you can see, we had to re-drill the holes because the Highboy frame is narrower than the regular truck frame, and they only sell these for all the other trucks. They don't sell one different for the Highboy. So you have to reconfigure the cross members and re-drill the holes to the narrower frame. I still have yet to weld this one back together. It's all mocked up and ready to go. But this new body's rust-free, very straight, very well taken care of truck, and should serve us well. So this truck was equipped with a 4-speed transmission. It's a new process NP205. It was always a great working transmission. We put the old transmission back in after flushing it out and cleaning it up. And we'll be putting an auxiliary overdrive on the back of the transfer case. This should give us a nice highway gear. So the parts truck we bought was a XLT Ranger, as I said earlier, and it only had about 79,000 original miles on it, and very well kept truck. Of course, the desert heat does a real number on your dash pads and interior, but we had a really great solid cab to start with, and had to do a couple modifications because the original was automatic. We had to cut out the low hump to put in the bolt-in high hump for the manual transmission, but it had air conditioning, had AM/FM stereo, and even has, I believe it has intermittent wipers as well, which is kind of cool. Saves me from having to add that later. I hope you enjoyed this talk about the Highboy project and what we're going to do with it and where it came from. I'm planning to put some more videos up in the future about it. I hope you'll watch, like, subscribe, and follow along.